Welcome back to the Calabash Diaries, where we uncover the power, pride, and resilience of Africa's greatest empires. Today we open the Calabash to Ethiopia, an ancient land of emperors, warriors, and sacred mountains. A kingdom that carried the Ark of the Covenant in legend, tamed impossible landscapes, and created grains that fed empires long before rice, wheat, or maize were even known. Ethiopia is not just a kingdom, it is a living time capsule of Africa's resilience. Fun fact, did you know Ethiopia is the only African country with its own unique alphabet, Ge'ez, still in use today? Or that it is one of the oldest Christian nations, yet also home to ancient Jewish communities, the Beta Israel, and Islamic centers? Few kingdoms ever balanced so many spiritual worlds in one land. The story of Ethiopia begins in the Horn of Africa, where mountains touch the clouds and rivers carve deep valleys. Archaeological evidence shows that people have lived here for hundreds of thousands of years. Some of the oldest human fossils, like Lucy, Australopithecus afarensis, were found in Ethiopian soil. By 1000 BCE, small chiefdoms were forming, connected to Arabia through trade across the Red Sea. Over time, they merged into a kingdom that we later call Aksum, Ethiopia's most famous ancient empire. Ethiopia's people didn't just appear in the highlands. Linguists trace their migration origins back to the southern Arabian Peninsula and across the Nile Valley. This means Ethiopia's roots were shaped by both African and Arabian cultures, creating a hybrid civilization with a unique worldview. Before gold, ivory, or incense made Ethiopia rich, it was grains that built its foundation. Long before wheat or rice spread across the world, Ethiopia had already domesticated teff and enset, the false banana. These crops were uniquely suited to the highlands. Teff thrived in thin soils, gave a starchy food supply that could be stored underground for years, while enset could withstand drought. By 2000 BCE, they had become the backbone of Ethiopia's survival. Ancient farmers selected teff for its tiny seeds, which could survive storage for years without spoiling, perfect for famines and wars. Enset wasn't just food, its fibers were used for ropes, mats, and shelter, making it a true survival crop. Modern science shows that teff contains higher iron and calcium than most global cereals, giving Ethiopian warriors natural strength. Rock carvings in the Tigray highlands show storage pits and granaries dating back over 2,000 years, proving how central grain storage was to empire building. Its kingdoms like Dimet, 10th century BCE, and later Aksum, 1st century CE, emerged, grain control became political power. Emperors taxed farmers, built granaries, and stored reserves for armies. From the highlands of Aksum to the Red Sea ports of Adulis, Ethiopia's agricultural wealth supported armies, priests, and merchants. Ethiopian emperors controlled food the way pharaohs controlled the Nile. The saying was, "He who controls the grain controls the throne." Some rulers distributed free bread during festivals to prove their power, a tradition older than Rome's bread and circuses. Adulis, the Aksumite port, had warehouses bigger than temples, storing grain for shipment to Arabia, India, and even the Roman Empire. Camel caravans carried Ethiopian grain across deserts, stored in granaries carved into mountainsides, and distributed to provinces as both tax and tribute. Control of grain meant control of soldiers, workers, and temples while ships carried it across seas, proving that food was Ethiopia's first weapon of empire. These grains were not just food, they were power. Kings controlled their distribution, and armies marched on injera, flatbread made from teff, the way Roman soldiers marched on wheat bread. Scientists recently discovered that Teff's genetic diversity is greater than almost any crop in the world. This means ancient Ethiopian farmers deliberately selected varieties for different soils, seasons, and altitudes, a genetic farming library still feeding millions today. Ancient records show that grain reserves in Axum were guarded as closely as royal treasure. In some cases, emperors would burn enemy fields instead of looting them, knowing hunger was the most effective weapon. Ethiopia's highlands are rugged, with steep mountains and thin soils. Yet farmers here built terraces, stone walls that held soil and water in place, creating steppe-like farmlands that still exist today. Irrigation canals carried water, while crop rotation and intercropping kept fields fertile. This was more than farming, it was an art of survival. Each family carried ancestral knowledge of soil, weather, and seeds, knowledge so advanced it rivals modern sustainability practices. Ethiopian farmers believed every seed carried a spirit. Before planting, elders performed rituals asking the land for permission. These ceremonies may have been dismissed by outsiders as superstition, but they encoded centuries of ecological wisdom. Ethiopia became one of the first kingdoms in the world to adopt Christianity in the 4th century, under King Ezana of Axum. But faith here was never one-dimensional. The Beta Israel Jewish community kept their traditions alive for centuries, while Islamic centers like Harar flourished later. Warriors fought under banners embroidered with crosses, lions, and the Ark of the Covenant, a symbol said to rest in Axum to this very day. Ethiopia's kings were not just rulers, but also priests and warriors, guardians of divine heritage. Ethiopia's rugged terrain bred fierce warriors. Soldiers carried long spears, curved swords, and shields made of hippopotamus hide. Kings like Ezana led armies that expanded Ethiopia's frontiers, conquering Nubia and Yemen. Ethiopian war drums called Nagarit were beaten before battles, said to sound like thunder rolling across valleys. The highlands trained men in mountain warfare, making invaders struggle in the narrow passes. Ezana's inscriptions in stone proclaim, "I burned, I killed, I took prisoners." Proof that Ethiopia was as ruthless as any empire. War leaders often wore lion manes into battle, symbolizing courage and invoking the power of the Lion of Judah. Ancient Ethiopian soldiers carried shields made of hippo hide, which were said to be almost impenetrable to arrows. The warrior chants, still preserved in rural areas, tell us that they believed the shield itself had a soul that could drink the anger of spears. Ethiopia's heart beats in its language. The Ge'ez script, carved on stelae and written in manuscripts, is one of the few indigenous scripts in Africa still alive today, in Amharic and Tigrinya. Culture was preserved through oral storytelling, music, and coffee ceremonies. Ethiopia is the birthplace of coffee, where beans were first roasted and brewed into the drink that powers the world today. In ancient courts, musicians used kra, lyres, and washant, flutes, to communicate royal messages. Some melodies were so sacred that only certain families could play them. Breaking this rule was punishable by exile. Ethiopian builders left wonders that rival Egypt and Rome. The stelae of Axum rise like skyscrapers, some over 30 meters tall, carved from a single stone. Later, the rock-hewn churches of Lalibela amazed travelers. Entire cathedrals carved from living rock in the 12th century. These structures were not just religious, they were symbols of permanence, proof that Ethiopia would not be erased by time. Local tradition says the builders of Lalibela churches worked at night with the help of angels. Modern researchers believe this angelic speed may refer to entire villages working communally, turning construction into a spiritual festival. Ethiopia thrived on gold, ivory, animal hides, and incense. But unlike many kingdoms, it also had independent food security, thanks to its unique grains. Merchants traveled with coinage stamped with crosses and royal images, making Aksum one of the first African states to mint its own money. Some Ethiopian coins have inscriptions in Greek, Ge'ez, and South Arabian, a sign that Ethiopia saw itself as an international empire. No other African state at the time projected such cosmopolitan influence. Like all kingdoms, Ethiopia faced enemies, shifting trade routes that favored the rising Islamic caliphates, environmental changes that reduced rainfall, and internal divisions. The port of Adulis was lost, cutting Ethiopia off from global trade. Without this lifeline, the kingdom turned inward, focusing on survival rather than expansion. Oral tradition says that when the seas closed, emperors turned their focus to the mountains. Some hidden monasteries, carved into cliffs, may have been built during this retreat, safe vaults for manuscripts and treasures. Ethiopia never fell completely. While other kingdoms disappeared, Ethiopia reinvented itself through the Zagwe dynasty, the Solomonic line, and finally as the only African empire to resist European colonization at Adwa in 1896. The ancient grains remain. Teff and enset still sustain millions today, and scientists look to them as solutions to climate change and food security. Some Ethiopian families keep clay jars of ancestral grain seeds hidden in caves, an unbroken link to farmers from over 2,000 years ago. These hidden seed vaults are Ethiopia's true treasure. And so, the story of the Kingdom of Ethiopia closes, not as an ending, but as an echo. From the highlands of Aksum to the sacred churches carved from stone, from the farmers who tamed Teff and enset to the kings who carved their names into history, Ethiopia remains a beacon of resilience and legacy. Thank you for opening the Calabash with us today. If this journey moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, so more stories may rise from the ashes of time. This is the Calabash Diaries, where Africa's past is power and its stories everlasting.